shit even working? I don't know if anybody's here, but I'm having all kinds of technical difficulties today. Hey, alright. Well, looks like the stream's at least kind of working. Hey, what's up, man? I'm gonna need your help. OBS decided to delete all of my settings and everything, so I have absolutely no idea. I had to rebuild basically the entire streaming configuration from scratch in like 20 minutes. So can you hear me, first of all? Second of all, does it look sort of okay? Hey, what's up? Can anybody hear me? All right, you can hear me. Are the audio levels all right? Yeah, this is definitely some bullshit. I had to completely reinstall OBS and build like everything from scratch, which is really, really annoying. I'm gonna give it another like 1 to 2 minutes, and I'm gonna start streaming. We don't really have any like, I don't know, no major updates or anything. There was a release recently that's fixed a bug with the preset sharing. Yeah, so I have it on webcam right now. So the plan for today's stream is we're going to play around with the FRAXTAL instrument and maybe do another brief tutorial of the create view. And first step to, that's what I expect. The first step to diving into the FRAXTAL instrument is actually going over what it is. It's like a feedback simulation. So I've got a camera here. I'm just going to get started. So check it out. Video feedback. I apologize if this is like old news to you guys, but I'm gonna kind of start from scratch. That's still intended, no synth view. I'm gonna turn it on in a second. So FRAXTAL, the instrument, the major thing that's running on the synth, is a simulation of video feedback. So it's doing this kind of effect. So what I have is a web camera, and I'm pointing it at my computer, which is showing the output of the web camera. So we get a recursive loop. So on my computer, you see a picture of my computer, and inside of that, there's a picture of my computer. And you're kind of seeing backwards in time a little bit. See if I wave my hand, kind of propagates down through there. Hey, cool, yeah, welcome to the stream. Glad you made it. So this is gonna be a bit of a basic stream. We're gonna go over the FRAXTAL instrument. We're not gonna use like modulation or any of the advanced stuff. So I'm gonna try to encourage people to make more patches, but in order to make more patches, I think I need to explain a little more clearly like how the create view works, how the first instrument works. So video feedback. So inside of OBS here, you definitely see a picture of OBS inside of OBS, and it's an infinite recursive loop. I can move the camera closer and backwards, kind of zoom in and out. I can rotate it. So on each iteration of this feedback, you get another bit of rotation added to the previous bit, so it kind of composes itself with itself. And yeah, you can wave content or stuff inside of there. Here's like a remote. So the FRAXTAL instrument on the synth is basically a digitized version of this. So with a digitized version, we can actually control the content a little more precisely. The contents on the synth in the FRAXTAL instrument is the seed module. So we can do a couple things with the camera. We can move it left and right, up and down. We can rotate it. We can zoom in and out. But on the synth, you can do a whole bunch more crazy shit. You can put a whole bunch of math in there, kind of do bends and distortions of the screen, and that's the recurse module. It kind of controls all of that stuff. And then there's like a color module. You see how it gets really washed out, like the farther you kind of get into there? That's an artifact of how the camera's picking up the light. And because we're simulating the process, you don't have that, but we can kind of introduce like that kind of stuff with the color module at the end and with other various effects. So that being said, we're gonna get started. So this is just a quick demonstration of video feedback to kind of like wrap your head around a little bit what's going on the synth. So I'm gonna turn this camera off, and now I got feedback. So we got the synth right here, and we're in the create view. So this is sort of like zooming your camera in and out. And this little red border is generated by the seed module. It's the content that's being fed into the feedback system. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to turn a couple things off. I'm going to turn off some symmetry. And now we have like a rotation, which is basically just like I was rotating the camera earlier. I think we also have some controls to... Actually, yeah. You can kind of go into here and you get controls for moving the camera left and right, moving the camera up and down, this kind of stuff. So, the Fractal instrument simulates video feedback. The seed module creates the content that gets fed into the feedback system. The recurse module controls the shape of the recursion, which basically is like your little camera. And the color module does a post-processing effect. So that happens at the end. It doesn't actually get incorporated into the feedback, but it definitely lets you like colorize the output. Then there's the modulation module, which we're not going to touch today. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to turn off. Another brief overview of the create page. Again, sorry if this is old information to some of you, but I want to be kind of comprehensive and kind of, yeah, go a little bit over exactly what's going on in the create view. So I'm going to zoom in right here, technically. Why is it like doing that even? Oh, there we go. Sure. Why not? All right, so the create view. So the system is based around modules. The root level module is called an instrument. And this instrument is composed of these sub-modules. So these are like the modules that are wired into it. So this is the Fractal instrument's inputs. On this page, you can also see the macros control, which is the current controls that are hooked up to the 5 blue knobs. There's multiple pages of these. You can just shift left and right. There can be up to 3 pages. There's a little like marker right there, which actually shows you which page you're on. So this page has various other controls. Similarly for buttons, this shows you what's on the 5 buttons. Right now there's a saw wave on the a.th parameter. You can tap on these to actually get in here and control what the button does in a little more detail. There's similarly several pages of buttons. The key thing to know, well, another thing to know, there's a little gold border which lets you scroll through here. You can also hold down the shift button and do like multi-pages of scrolling. You can tap down the yellow knob to load a patch. I think you can hit red in this to reset to the instrument. If you are in here and you do a whole bunch of like stuff with knobs, you can also hit this to reset to the current patch. You can also swap out sub-modules. So you push there to move the gold border, and now we're going to change the sub-module to something that uses an image. You can swap out this sub-module for that right there, and then you have a different recursive structure. You can swap out one that's like diagonalized. Tap some buttons to draw on some animations. So this is the basic idea of the create view. In my opinion, it's not as complicated as a lot of people tend to think. But yeah, it's definitely something that takes a little bit of getting familiar with. So we're gonna go here, we're gonna reset back to the patch. Key thing to know about the create view is that you can dive in and then you go down a level. So we're in the seed module. You can navigate back by tapping on the nav bar there. Go into expand. And yeah, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a simplified version of this patch real quick. So we're going to go into the color module and turn off the lighting. We're going to try to keep things really simple today. So you see like the lighting creates like a fake like 3D effect. You can actually go inside of the lighting module and like move lights around. Never played with that. Let's zoom it in now. Zoom it in. So you see it looks like there's like a light that's being moved left and right. There we go. It gives it like sort of a 3D effect, but it's not quite 3D. So we're going to turn that off for this tutorial, at least for the time being. So we'll go to no light. Then we're going to go into the recurse module, and we're going to turn off the symmetry. So you see like when I kind of do this rotation here, it adds like a mirror symmetry to everything. And that comes from the recurse module. So we're going to turn off this fold right here. We might add it back later, but I don't even know. And put this control back. Where was that even? There we go. And now we're going to go into the seed module. All right, so this is where we're starting today. Actually, no. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to save this so we can just get back into here. Fractal basic. Actually, let me go over what the basic controls are on the instrument first. So there's 5 default macros that come with this, and they're there for a reason. So this is like a zoom control. It's pretty much the most basic one. Often when you're playing around with something or you're creating something randomly, the most important thing to do is get the zoom level at the right point. So in my opinion, if you get it zoomed out too far, you get too much like noise in a lot of cases. If you zoom in too much, you get nothing. So what you really want to do is kind of maximize the number of iterations in a lot of ways. So you see, if you get it kind of right here, you just get like levels upon levels of iterations. There's this width control. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to demonstrate what that does. This is the second most important control. It controls the size of the seed, basically. So if it's really small, then you get only a little bit of this border. The larger it gets, the more it fills up the actual space. So if it gets too large, you kind of like cut out all the previous iterations, so you don't get as much like visible feedback. So it's kind of important to control the level of content that feeds into the recursive system. But you can also kind of get that effect with this control right here, which controls the opacity of the seed. So this is letting you like kind of see through the seed. So alpha is equal to 1. You go down, you get transparency in this level. The next control is just for color. So this just cycles the color around. It's just a hue rotation. So red gets translated to blue. If this is, yeah, you put it at 0.3, but it's going to cycle 33% around the hue wheel. So red goes to green, green goes to blue, etc. You put it at 0.6, then it goes 60% around. This next one is actually pretty interesting too. So it's all the way down to 0 right now. Let's set these controls back. So what this does is it modifies the hue on each iteration of the feedback. So you see how if I turn this up, like you start getting like a rainbow as it goes from the out to the middle? So that's because of this control right here. This controls how much that rainbow happens. So right now there's basically no change in the hue on the iterations, and now it's like subtle. What this does is really useful for highlighting the recursion as it's like farther down in the depths. So let me turn this all the way off. You see how you can see like a lot of like really fine details, but it's not highlighted. So because they're all the same color. So this right here is going to start slowly highlighting all the really intricate stuff. Kind of turn the opacity down to get some of that too. See, all the way off, all in solid color. So you slowly turn it up. You start being able to see these like kind of intricate like details, which are like very low levels in the recursion. So there's a second page. So the zoom control is so important that even on the second page, it's the first control, which might be a stupid idea. I don't really know. The next control is a rotation, which is cool. You see, we had the symmetry turned off. So we're not having that symmetry anymore, so it's just a pure rotation. There's another zoom control. This zoom happens after the symmetry. This one happens before the symmetry. So they are a little different, even though they are at the moment doing the same thing because the symmetry is off. Another thing to know, you can always hold down shift to get the second page macros or the next page. If there's 3 pages and you're on the second page, you'll get the third page. So quick access to this rotation control. Shift, and then knob 2. Also, You can tap the knobs down to reset them if you didn't know that. Second page, you have this control right here, which rotates the seed. This actually isn't changing the recursion. Recursion is changing what is being fed into the recursion by rotating it. So we rotated, I think, 45 degrees. Let's actually put it on 0 point. What is going on here? I don't even know. This looks like it has a weird value. I think it's being multiplied by some value because of its sensitivity or something. There we go. 0.125. That actually makes sense. 80% or 1/8 of the way around to get it diagonal. This right here moves the seed left and right, but because it was rotated, you see, moving the seed. And there's a symmetry on the seed too, just because it is a finite dimension buffer. Like if you go outside of it, you have to repeat it because there's no content there otherwise. Similarly, there's just a bunch of LFOs on here. This is just starts rotation on the seed. This starts a scroll on the seed. This rotates an angle. So with the symmetry off, it's a little bit more obvious what this thing is doing. It's just spinning the camera basically. This right here has multiple things. This is an effect that's currently turned off. This one right here is going to start a color rotation, I believe. So it's just going to start rotating the color left and right, or rotating the color through a circle. So you see right here now, hue offset is being scrolled through multiple values. You can also tap on it to see that the value is changing. So that's because of that LFO. You see the LFO is highlighted to let you know that there's an LFO going on here. Turn that off. There's a second page of these things too. So this is gonna take the seed and rotate it and also move it around on a 2-dimensional curve called a rose curve. This is definitely a cool effect. This right here is for textures. I don't even know what this is. This is another effect that's currently off. This is moving the lights around. So there's a bunch of LFOs here. All right, so we're gonna go into the seed. Actually, no, we're gonna start in the recurse module. First of all, we'll reset the seed right here by doing this. Oh, yeah, so the seed is reset. Actually, let's just reset the entire system right here. Oh wait, no, we wanna load our basic patch. Yeah, the UX has definitely had a lot of improvements. It's definitely a million times better than it used to be. I'm actually like in the middle of dreaming up what the next iteration is going to look like. I think this is going to be kind of relegated to be the advanced view, and there's going to be something like a create view, but it's going to be a little more simplified. But I haven't really quite figured that out yet, but it's definitely going to happen. So yeah, give me 1 second to tap on a few things. Yeah, so check it. So we're going to go into the recurse view right here. Actually, let's first, yeah, there we go. Let's go into the recurse module. So yeah, again, you go to tap on it and then you hit expand. And then you see the recurse module is made of its own submodules. You have one which controls how the layers are blended right here. You have an effect that gets input on each stage of the recursion. All right, so actually, yeah, so I'll get into all of these things. So this right here controls how the screen is bent. This is a basic like no bending of the screen, so it's just displaying the previous frame with basic camera controls like zooms, rotation, and all that kind of stuff. Then you have fold, which basically adds symmetry to the system. Let's go into that one first. So first of all, actually, let me rotate things a little bit. So this is basically rotating the camera. So I clicked on params and we're rotating this angle right here. All right. If we go right here and put it on fold 1x, this is gonna fold it on a vertical axis. So click down and now you see we get the rotation, but it's mirrored. All right, we turn it off. Sometimes this is really useful. A lot of these things add a lot of like really complicated like mathy shit. And if you have the fold off, it can get really noisy. So this is going to fold on the horizontal axis. This is going to fold on both of those axes. 3-way and so forth. This should be one of the more explanatory things here, self-explanatory things. 5-way symmetry. So this basically just adds symmetry to the system. And the reason you might want to do that, like I said, let's just put it on one of these mathy things. So that actually doesn't look bad. you start rotating, doing some of this kind of stuff, it starts looking a little weird. But some of these symmetries start looking cool when you start adding some of the mathy stuff into it. See, that one does not look cool, but they're all there as options. So these are basically like math formulas which explain how the screen is deformed. Another interesting thing you can do, let's reset to the default. I think you can, yeah. Does this work here? I don't think that works here. No, it doesn't. Okay, well, we'll reload the inits right here. If you go into here, you can tap right here to actually see a little bit of what they're doing. So this kind of like tries to give you a graphical representation of what the actual patch does. Another thing, if you guys don't know this, there's this cool preview feature right here. What this does is, so we're like 3 modules deep. We're in the recurse module. We're in the func_z, which is a math function of the recurse module in the fractal instrument. You can view these modules in isolation. How you do that is in any view on the create view, you hit shift and then hit preview. And this is going to show you what the module itself is doing. It's going to try to create a graphical representation of how the module works. So this is basically showing you how the screen is bent. So each one of these little like panels here is one copy of the screen. So this is showing you that you're going to get like multiple copies of the screen. Let's find one right here. So each one of these little panels is going to be a copy of the screen. So you should see multiple copies. We're going to turn the symmetry off. So you kind of see that shape that we had there. So Blender shows you how to blend between the individual layers. So if you hit only seed, you'll only get to see the seed layer. So now you actually see the seed, but it's tiled based on this whole math function we have right here. You got some symmetry. It'll kind of flip this around the center axis. We're not going to do much with the blend modes. Basically, these are a lot of blend modes that are kind of stolen from Firefox. Yeah, so there's a preview for every single one of these things. So you can go into like the seed module, and you can just see the seed module in isolation. So right now, actually, wait, right here. So you see it's just like literally just a border. And as there's the first control in the seed module zooms in and out. As you can see, the seed is being zoomed out. Did I say Firefox? I meant Photoshop. Yeah. All right. So let's reset this back to here. Another nifty feature. Actually, let me go into here and reset this guy. All right. So you hold down navigate. You can actually get access to the root level macro controls, even if you're not in the root module. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off this one right here, the depth scale. So now we're getting no color change on each iteration. What we're going to do though is we're going to turn on this effect. So we're going to turn on an invert effect. Resets, well, I guess to reset a parameter, you just tap the knob down. So zoom, my first knob doesn't work well in this sense. So let's do this right here. Tap knob down, blam. So if you tap a knob down, you get actually a little context menu that pops up. The first option is reset. So a quick way to reset parameters. All right, so. All right, I'm gonna turn the effect off. Now we're gonna turn the effect onto invert. So invert basically turns white into black kind of thing, and black into white. So it basically flips the RGB values into 1 minus R, 1 minus G, 1 minus B. There is a module reset. It doesn't seem to work in the sub module view. I think it's kind of broken. But you hold down navigation to load the init patch. You hold down navigation plus gold to load the init patch. So yeah, the init patch for the effect is no effect. And if you've modified the patch, you can, so let's just say we have this effect loaded, and if we've modified it, you press blue and knob down and it'll reload the basics of that patch. So that's basically module reset. You hold down the shift or the navigation button and press gold. All right, so we're gonna turn on the invert effect. So one of the nifty things about inverting is that if you do it twice, you get back to the original value. So if we turn on this effect, you'll see that it cycles every 2 iterations of the animation. So all the way on. So the first one is flipped these reds to cyan, which I think is the opposite of, yeah, red in RGB space. And then that gets flipped back to red. So, whoops. So already we have something cool. We can try different effects. That didn't do anything interesting. That is madness. This sphere effect is actually really cool. It's one of my favorites. So basically this converts the color space from RGB into some crazy like spherical color space, and then it does a rotation on the sphere, which is awesome. So another thing you can do, all right, so you tap on this parameter, go to LFO, and now we have this parameter, it's rotating itself right there. All right, so we're just gonna leave that on. We're gonna do the exact same thing here. We're gonna set this at a different value. So Beats is analyzing the audio that's coming in, and it's determining the BPM, and it's going to use that as the period of the LFO. And we're gonna set it at something different than 32 so they don't repeat with the same cycle. So they're gonna be out of phase with each other, sort of. And we use a saw wave, which is fine because this is an angular parameter. So when it gets to 1, it basically repeats down to 0 anyways. So we're gonna animate all of these parameters. Oops, we're not doing that. Sorry. Put you on LFO2. It's gonna be slower for no reason at all. All right, so we're already starting to build something interesting just by creating some colorizing that happens on each iteration of the animation. All right, so we're gonna stick with this right here. So we've got basically a rotation. We're gonna increase the depth scale to make a little bit of variation as you go into the middle. Now we're gonna go into the seed module, explain a little bit about what's going on there. So go into seed here. All right, so like I said, you can show the seed in isolation just by hitting preview right here. So you see the seed is just a border. We have a little bit of an aspect ratio issue here, so you're only seeing the outsides of the border. But the seed is basically, it has its own submodules just as the other modules do. So the seed basically creates a shape with this little shape module, puts a texture on it, and then adds any number of effects. All right? So shape, pretty explanatory. It has a border, which is just a square that goes along the edge. You change it from border to just a pair of lines. You can have like a cross that goes in the middle. You can have just one line. You can have a circle. And again, you can go here and change the width, which changes the size of this. You can have a triangle. You can have a square. You can have a laced triangle where they kind of like go in and out, forth or behind and in front of each other and so forth. These solids and fades are actually pretty cool. So right now we have just one solid color, because we're not using transparency, there's no opaque regions in this. So you see, like, in this kind of thing, you have a solid region, which is a square, and everything else is transparent. With this completely solid thing here, there's no transparency inherent, so you actually have to reduce the alpha parameter to actually get any transparency. But it's not going to do anything interesting here because we don't have any actual content to there. There's no variation, so we're composing solid on top of solid on top of solid, so you didn't get to see anything interesting. This actually shows a little bit of interesting stuff. We'll do something with that later. Just like a torus, hexagonal lattice. Let me turn the alpha back up. All right. So there's also a bunch of parameters here. You can zoom the seed in and out. And here, let's play with the seed in isolation. So this is a seed. It's like a lattice of, or kind of a laced hexagon sort of thing. This rotates the entire seed. The effect amount, there's no effects at the moment. This b.x moves the seed left and right, up and down. Page 2. When you put some textures on it, these next 4 control the texture. This height is only doing anything when there's actually lighting on, but there's no lighting, so that doesn't do anything at all. We'll go right here, and we'll put on a texture. So right now, so there's a lot of texture sources. This is actually a pretty broad part of the synth. So you can use any of these generative textures right here. There's a library. This one just creates like a stripe. This creates like this kind of pattern. Got this one right here. So these just use like basic math formulas to create the texture. Let's use, that's black and white. These actually look pretty cool. And you can actually even dive into this and like, you can start building these from scratch. So now that we have a texture, you can like move the texture around. So this is zooming the texture in and out. This is rotating the texture. This is scrolling the texture, left and right, up and down, that kind of stuff. So let's just do something interesting right here. Let's put this on an LFO. Sure, let's put it on with a period of 68 beats, and we'll start it. It's gonna go back and forth. And now, we'll increase the size, and we'll turn off the preview and see what we've created. Kind of gaudy. It's so cool. All right, let's go back to something basic, or let's play around with some of these texture sources. So this is an image texture. So there's an image library, which a lot of you are probably pretty familiar with, but we've got a bunch of stock images here. Yeah, so I'm actually going to go into the recurse module and turn off this little sphere effect. That's where a lot of the gaudiness is coming from. So no effect here. So where's that rotation even coming from? Let's try to find out. Oh, I think it's coming from the recurse module. So let's go into the recurse module and turn off the rotation, which I think is just that right there. There we go. We'll go here, we'll turn up the depth scale to try to highlight some of the further layers down there. And let's move this thing off to the side. See what happens. We got it at exactly 1, which is cool. This one at exactly 1 as well. Rotating the seed. Make the seed smaller. All right, let's play around with some more things. Actually, let's turn this image texture off. So you see how there's like a gradient from here? So the texture itself is just a solid red texture, but there's still a gradient on the edges of this, this shape. That's controlled by this little thing right here, which is very not explanatory. So basically, there's a value that goes from 0 to 1 at the center of the shape, and it goes, or from the edge to the center of the shape, and this is a transformation. So something to know is you can turn off that gradient by doing like positive wave. So now you just got a solid color. And you can play around with the gradient by putting it through various waves right here. You can kind of like invert the gradient. So this is how it is normal. Let's put it through some pulses. This is actually kind of interesting. You can increase the, change the pulse width here. This is kind of cool already. Similarly, this controls like the transparency as it goes from the center of the shape to the edge. So we're making the shape partially transparent. Go and increase the width of the shape again. So just like everywhere else, you have a huge library of these things. There's like all these waveforms. Oh, let's check out the step wave. Step wave always looks cool. Not here. So where are we even? Let's try inverse step wave. There we go. This is one of these things where you don't really need to understand it too much. You just kind of play around. But one thing to know is any place you have a waveform, you can find like the band wave, which is reading and analyzing the audio track and giving you audio information. So you click this on right here and you're gonna get audio reactivity. Doesn't look great, but you can mess around with it and fix that properly. So you see, we're going to change the depth control, and it's going to change the amount of rainbowiness. So all the way down, no rainbowiness. Or the depth scale. As we slowly get it up, we're getting more rainbows. Because right now you can see like a ton of iterations. It's kind of pulsing in tune with the music. So you turn this up. And you can use like note wave to control this. Instead of with the audio, you control it with MIDI. You can use CV wave to control it with CV stuff. But we're going to go back to just like square wave, why not? Zoom in and out. Let's just randomly choose a different texture. Let's try image texture again, see what happens. That actually looks kind of cool. Let's go into here and just choose a different image. I always like this guy, but it's a little bit too detailed, so we're going to zoom in. We're going to go to this text.ar thing, so here we go. All right, we're going to go back here and change this angle back to nothing. Wait, I think, or maybe it was right here. No. There we go. Turn off the rotation. All right. the scale right here to highlight some of the underlying layers. And what else was I gonna do in here? Yeah, so there's an effect here. We'll preview this layer, all right? So this is the invert effect. Black goes to white, yellow goes to blue. Turn this off. See, this doesn't get composed with itself over and over again like the effect in the recurse module does. This just changes the actual seed itself. So it looks cool. I'm gonna try different effects. Black and white. That actually looks kind of great. Saturate. Pastel. Quantize is cool. There's some more advanced effects. That is kind of gnarly. But we had, let's go to saturate. All right. So this stripe right here is probably one of the more mysterious things in this module. It's basically a fixed function effect, which adds either a horizontal or a vertical stripe of either color or transparency to the seed. So, alpha stripe. Let's see if that actually does something obvious. No. All right, let's try just stripe 1. Let's go to preview. So this added a little bar on the edge. All right. So right here adds horizontal bars. So right here is a horizontal rainbow, I think, if it's animated. This is a vertical, that's a horizontal color kind of thing. You go in there and there's a bunch of parameters that do a bunch of stuff. Basically just is a way to add like variation to your shape. All right. You don't really need to understand it in super great detail, but there's just a lot of stuff you can do with it, or a lot of things that just look cool. So we'll turn off the preview. Now you see we've just added some animation that looks pretty great. Looks pretty rad. And this is with like 70% of the advanced features of the synth not doing anything. There's like no lighting, there's no modulation. We haven't even gotten to the color module, and you already can get some stuff like this. The recurse module is not really doing anything. This is just a really basic recursive loop with some interesting content. All right, so I'm actually gonna go here and save this. Done. And I'm gonna go share it. Preset sharing, you know? It's a new thing. So this is now available in the Discord server, so you can follow along. It should be. It should get a little ding soon. Yep, there you go. So now let's go into the recurse module and start adding some mathy stuff. So we'll just play around with these and see what we get. See, that is way too much. See, this is also too much. If you zoom out, you get way too much like kind of garbagey stuff, and also something is out of alignment. So let me go in here and try to figure out what that is. No, come on. I think it must just be a rotation or something. Yeah. There we go. Now, zoom in. Let's try a different one. Let's try this guy. All right, that looks cool. This one inherently has some symmetry to it. Do some rotations, it starts getting really gnarly. This is where you kind of lose a lot of the symmetry. But you get a nice spiral. You can go in here and just change some of these other things. You can move the spiral around. You know, what we're actually going to do is we're going to go back into the seed module and do something a little more basic. So we're just going to load the default seed. Alright, we're going to turn the rainbowiness down by changing the depth scale. Now we're just going to play around in the recurse module. Let's reinitialize the recurse module. There we go. Turn the symmetry off. Now I'll start playing with the math functions. Actually, keep doing this until I can find a really cool one. All right, so we're gonna make something cool with this. All right, add a little bit of rotation. All right, so what we're gonna do, we are gonna do something interesting with the seed. But it's gonna be pretty basic. We're just gonna change this to, it's too complicated. That's definitely still too complicated. There we go. And we're gonna change the colors with an effect. Turn the effect on. Nope. I kind of like that. All right, let's try to put some animation on here. No, not that. Yeah, let's put this guy right here on an LFO. And then we're gonna change it to a saw LFO. We're gonna start that. So this is kind of making that pattern go from inside to outside, and it should repeat. It's being a little choppy. I actually don't really know why. Might be because of the quantize effect that we're using. Let's try. You can change the number of quantization levels. Right now we have 4. Yeah, why? That animation looks way choppier than it should. I really don't understand why. Let me try a different effect. That looks better. It must have been the quantization effect. We're gonna go and change that LFO to a sine wave because it is being choppy towards the edge. All right, I think we are probably done in the recurse module. You can play around with the symmetry just to see what happens. So this is going to be XY symmetry. It looked better with the little spiral in the middle. There's some weird symmetry modes towards the end. That is cool. All right, so we're gonna keep that and maybe play around with, oh, there we go. And now we're gonna change that depth scale parameter, and we should get some variation as we go towards the middle. So it's gonna kind of highlight that little like fractally bit down in the center. So all the way off. Now there's a little more color visible towards the center. What else can we do if we move these around? Nope. All right, so we got this cool little fractal curve looking thing. So now we're gonna go into the color layer right here, or the color module. And we're gonna play around with that. So the color module is basically a composition of 3 effects. One is a post-processing effect, which is sort of like a normal effect, except it takes into account like the iteration depth. An effect basically is just a transformation from RGB to RGB, so it just takes a color and turns it into a different color. Well, this post-processing thing right here actually figures out like how many recursions into the synth the pixel is. So this is how you actually like highlight the stuff that's kind of down in the center of these things. Anyways, so right now we just have the most basic effect, which basically just rotates the hue on each iteration a little bit. There's a slightly more advanced one right here, which is called post HSV, where you can actually change like the saturation and the value. So now hypersaturated, it's gonna be just dark. This right here is interesting. It lets you like restrict the hue to a smaller subset of the whole RGB wheel. There's this color sphere effect, which is cool. You can go in here and just mess around with these until you find something you like. Oop. I don't even know what I'm doing. All right. There's a few parameters in here that are interesting. So there's this depth scale parameter, which I've been talking about. So now it's just a homogeneous color palette. This is going to start highlighting the center. Maximum. You see it pop out a little bit more. It's good to get this at the smallest amount possible that satisfies what you're trying to go for. Hue offset, we can just globally change the color. Because we're using a slightly different effect, it's not going to behave as quite as you might expect. Post amount, this determines how much of that post-processing function we're actually going to use. So you turn it all the way off, then that post module is just completely deactivated. It's actually doing quite a subtle thing. Fade is just a global in and out scale. Original value is kind of hard to explain. This basically determines whether you maintain the black levels of the incoming image or not. Turn that off. And then just, yeah, red, green, and blue controls. You turn one down just to kind of like limit the effect of a certain color channel. Let's just add an effect. So effect happens after the post-processing. Again, you have a million choices for what to do here. I know that looks pretty great. This HSV madness is one of my favorite effects. It's kind of hard to explain what it does. It's actually not really important, but it's cool. There's also these mod ZX and mod ZY and mod ZR controls. They don't really affect the color, but they happen at the end of the processing chain, so I stuck them in here. This basically is just a global like scale. They're really useful as modulation targets, which I'm not going to get into right here. So that's an offset. This is an offset, and this is the scale one. But if you do use modulation, they let you basically like warp the screen, which is cool. But I'm going to turn them off right now. All right, we're gonna go back into the seed module and change our texture. Again, this is what the seed module looks like on its own. It's just a border with a color that's being animated. I think, didn't we have a stripe here? No, turn the stripe off. Let's turn another stripe on. Some of these stripes are audio reactive too, which is cool. So you see, preview this module, you see that it's sort of responding to the audio. Let's try this one. Because it's just not visible in this preview for some reason. Oh, you know what? I don't think the audio values are actually fed into the previews. Oh, maybe they are. So you see it's cutting out regions of the shape based on like the audio. So we can turn this off and now you see what happens. It is definitely way too much. Doesn't look bad. All right, so let's go into the generative texture and just play around with these. So that was texture 5, let's try texture 4. And you see we're not changing it much because it's all being put through the post-processing at the end, which is mostly what's controlling the color. This is pretty cool. All right, so I'm gonna change the color palette again. I kind of like the general idea, but it's a little bit too green. I think we can do that by going into here and changing this. It was 0.8. Actually, that looked fine how it was compared to some of these. Oh, it's because we turned all the red off, I think. This is 0.4. Actually, I'm going to save this before going any farther. I'm gonna use navigation. I don't know if you guys have seen me do this, but this plus these 5 buttons is navigation. The third is into the color. Let's go turn the red back on. Hey, that doesn't look bad. A little bit too many colors, but we can fix that. All right, let's go. Let's just change this to like something else. Whoa. That looks really nice. This thing right here basically lets you generate a color. It's based on 3 palette or 3. It generates a palette based on 3 colors that you choose. You can go here and preview this module too. So right now it's. This is actually a horrible preview, huh? But just go in here and actually change what the color palette values are. You basically specify 3 colors by the red, green, and blue value. It sort of makes a palette based on these colors. But we're just gonna mess around and see what happens. So this is cool. I want some animation on this though. This is actually really nice. I don't want to change the shape, so I think the yeah, because the shape has a nice like fractal-y kind of awesome thing in it. So yeah, I want to animate the texture on the seed. It's being animated a little bit already, but I want to animate it more. So you see there's like stuff coming in from the outsides of this. Actually, let me save this real quick because this is awesome. All right, we'll go into the seed. You can just rotate it and see what even happens if you do that. Kind of destroys it a little bit. It does seem to maintain the cool fractally stuff, so this actually doesn't look as bad as I kind of thought it might. What happens if we do just put this on an LFO? It's not bad. I don't like those really solid, like, kind of flashes. So we'll turn that off. What if we rotate this? It's not terrible. Yeah, let's put both of these on LFOs. So this is the angle of the texture. Just maintaining this shape, it's just adding some variation in terms of some color oscillations. Do the same thing with this guy. Another thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go into the recurse module, and I'm gonna make this rotation kind of vary a little bit. So we're going to put an LFO onto this thing right here. Its current value is 0.07. So we're going to make it go from 0.06 to 0.08 really slowly. Actually, let's do it really fast just so you can see what it's actually going to do. So it's going to make that kind of go back and forth. I'm trying to keep it around this nice value of 0.7 that we found for the rotation, but also kind of like, yeah, give it some animation. All right, so this is cool. The last thing I'm gonna do before calling it for today is, I said I wouldn't, but I'm gonna go into the modulation system and then load some audio modulations. Wait, what? Ah, shit, that's not what I wanted. How did that even happen? Ah, fuck. I broke everything. Remove all these modulations. All right, I gotta go repair this preset now. Oh, come on, man. Where was it? Well, that's why you should save these presets. I really do need a back button or something like that. How did I have it be white in the middle of this thing? All right, when's the last time I saved it? Go back to here. think this was right before I added some animation, so let me just do that again real quick. I think I also had a stripe doing something. All right, and then I think we had stripe on something visible. No. Nope. Yeah, let's just leave it on that. Or this? No. All right, we're gonna go back into the recurse module and put this little LFO back on here. All right, now back in the modulation system. So what happened there? Modulation patterns store with them the parameters that are modulated. So when I loaded this thing right there, it started modulating some parameters and it kind of overwrote some of the parameter values. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go in here and just load one of these things. All right. So this is an audio reactive modulation pattern that looks like that. I'm going to use that to affect this mod ZR control parameter right here in the color module. But I don't want it to be as much of that. Actually, how about I have it on the mod ZX 2 lines there. That is way too much. Trying to make it like a little bit warbly with the music. Let's actually go into the modulation. Change a few things. Frequency lower. Nope. I just want to add a little bit of audio activity. All right, that's gonna be it. All right, so we created a cool patch. I'm gonna save it. And we're gonna go share this one too. All right. Any questions, comments? Oh, it's still sharing. Why is that taking so long? Failed to share patch. What the fuck's wrong with you? I know I'm connected to the internet. There we go. All right, presets successfully shared. Yeah, so we can do that. So this is definitely an advanced feature. We're gonna go into here. All right. So we've got this little rotation right here. All right. It's currently on an LFO that goes from 0 to 6 to 0.8. All right, instead of having it on an LFO, which we'll stop. Now it's stuck on value 0.8, sure. All right, we're gonna go into here and go to, yeah, info, IO. All right, we're gonna create an IO mapping. We're gonna map one of the audio channels to directly to the value of this parameter, all right? Signal, audio, let's do beat wave. This is a waveform that spikes every time there's a beat, all right? It's triggered always. Anytime the synth gets an audio signal, it's gonna trigger this action. So these mappings go from signals to action. So the synth is gonna listen for this signal, and every time it finds it, it's gonna execute this action. What we're gonna do is we're gonna set the value of this parameter, which was c0.th. It's the angular part of the two-dimensional parameter. I'm gonna actually do this shit right here. Where's my mouse? Turn this off, zoom in a little bit. Yeah. All right. It's gonna set the value of parameter c0.th to the signal value that it's getting right there. All right, and it's gonna map from 0. So the beat wave is going to return 0 to 1. Most of these signals have a value from 0 to 1. It's going to map that from 0 to 1 to 0 to 0.6 to 0.08. All right, and we're going to want some kind of attack. We'll put it in milliseconds just to smooth it out. This is basically like a low pass filter or a slew for people that know that kind of stuff. All right, and we're going to give it a try. Just see what happens. It also depends on if it's even successfully detecting the beat of this, but we'll see. We'll save it. Save it directly to the patch. I don't think it's actually detecting any beats. Let's go right here into audio. Yeah, the beat detection hasn't been great recently. Maybe it needs louder volume. Let me turn the volume up. So beat detection only works, oh wait, actually, maybe I need to do this. It only sends beats when it's confident enough. So we can change it from the beat wave to something else. I actually do need to put a little bit of work into this because this doesn't seem to be, yeah. Let me try something else. I can just use like the raw low frequency energy instead. So go to this mapping we just created. Press shift to get all the audio mappings. We only have this one. Nope. Edit. Instead of beat wave, we've got all these other audio signals, so let's just try a low frequency energy. Yes. See, it's really jittery. It does work. It's working exactly as intended, but it's jittery as shit. Oops, audio. Let's increase the attack to like 100 milliseconds. A little better. Sort of. This looks kind of bad. Let's go in here and try something else. There's a million options, so hopefully one of them looks cool. That's a problem with a lot of these audio signals. They're a little too choppy to put on some of these kind of parameters, particularly ones that have like a huge impact when you move them sharply. This is ridiculous. Let's try this thing. It's a large attack. This creates a little wave pulse every time there's like a micro change in volume. So like when like a drum hits or something like that, or there's like a new sound that comes in, it creates a little pulse. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's not like good. It's kind of what we're going for. This just isn't working. I wonder if there's another way to do this. No, I don't think so. What about volume? I'm surprised that's not a little more visible. Yeah, this is basically when it gets louder, this wave value increases, so this is a little more smooth, at least. Yeah, some of this is kind of half-baked, to be honest. Let's change the attack. Let's put this back or down to 0. So it now has a higher range. So now when the volume increases, it's going to warp proportionally. So this might actually be cool once it's on. Instead of average volume, let's do instantaneous volume. With a higher attack. Yeah, this isn't great. I really want that beat wave, but this just isn't a great parameter to put volume stuff on or audio stuff on. So let's actually try a different parameter. Let's try the stripe width. Oh, whoops. Turn off this modulation. See if we can actually see the audio coming in from that action. Oops. Not really. Let's try with a different stripe. See, all that flashing is coming from the audio mapping we just set up. Anyway, I actually got something to do in a few minutes, so I think I got a jet. Thank you for coming to the stream. We'll probably do some more of this next weekend. So yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions or if you have any topics you want me to cover. Yeah, all right. Thank you everybody for coming by. I'll see you next weekend.